Okay, hello everybody, and welcome to Lessons Learned by the Event Safety Alliance. It's a new webinar that we're putting together during COVID to reflect on the guidance that the ESA has written, the guidance that the WHO has distributed, the WHO and the CDC, any other guidance that we become aware of during the journey through COVID, good ideas that we could have done better. Basically, we want to try to capture the stories of getting through work while in COVID and make sure that our constituents, our tribe, our folks out there in the field also just trying to get started don't repeat mistakes that we've already made or we've already found out have been made. This week, we're joined by Joey Gallagher of Gallagher Staging. He and his dad are partners in Gallagher Staging, and Joey has been at the tip of the bleeding tip of the spear since the COVID crisis began, trying to be a problem solver and trying to capture ideas and actionable items and work for his tribe and for those in his orbit and his crews, and to just keep the message of positivity and we're going to get through this together going. Joey, welcome to Lessons Learned. Please tell us about yourself. Tell us how you're doing.
Hello, Jim. Thank you for having me. I appreciate what you're doing. We woke up one day and shows were gone. I like to say that our industry was put on pause because we're going to hit start again. I know it. And, every morning I'd wake up and I was used to being very busy and having all this, all these projects to work on. And that just wasn't there anymore. And it took me only a few days to realize I could take action. I can figure out a way to ensure that we can go back to work safely. And
sorry, go ahead.
And so as opposed to just coming up with concepts, I decided to actually do. So I got with my team and we talked about all these different projects we could do to help people during COVID, whether it's, relief structures. Obviously, we organized the EIR. I'm one of the co-founders of that. I've, a great team behind me on that. And then I started an actual venue. We built out one of our shops and turned it into a COVID-19 safe environment. And it kind of just naturally happened, to be honest, because we had to come back to work to start unloading trucks when gear was returning.
Yeah.
And I had to figure out how to keep my crew safe. Screening wasn't really a thing. No one knew what they were supposed to do for their employees. So we kind of had to write our own rules.
I'm guessing you went from trying to figure out how you were going to handle all the work that was in front of you, because I think you were heading into the most aggressive year Gallagher had ever seen. Like many companies were heading into the biggest year of their history. And then, literally overnight, we're on pause. So I imagine that was obviously quite the wake up call. But it didn't take you but a week or so before you were pivoting and heading into new ideas. Can you tell us how EIR came about?
Yeah, so Tamlin Wright of Silent House reached out. She heard that I was organizing a bunch of groups across the country to try and figure out how to build relief structures, because I know we could go into action faster than anybody. Our industry is comprised of so many professionals. We can turn a parking lot into, a full functional city in a matter of 3 days. So it was pretty clear to me that we could be the solution to, temporary medical facilities or anything that was needed for that matter, manufacturing, face shields. There's a lot of, I have this, SGN behind me because, I'd like to say there's a lot of good news, some good news. And our industry has a lot of good news. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of great companies out there. A lot of my competitors, we've reached out to each other and we're trying to organize and figure out how we can help this solution or situation with solution. And so that was the first thing I did. I focused on EIR. We had great companies, All Access, Joe Lewis Company, Go for Site Production, and Silent House. And then we started reaching out to other vendors across the country. Obviously ESA was willing to back us up in any way. And, we soon found out that the need wasn't as big as we intended or as we thought. And so our intentions were good. So we slowly started to pivot towards, all right, well, how can we help with testing, COVID-19 testing structures, facilities? How can we actually dig into testing? What testing will work for our industry? Because testing is a big deal. If we can know, how many people are positive against not positive, even before they enter a venue, that's going to be huge. So that's one way we pivoted. Multiple products we developed specific to COVID. But while that was happening, I was also building out Social Sanctuary, which the crazy thing is 3.5 weeks ago, the building didn't have paint on the walls.
Right.
Like you said, I was so busy, Jim, that, I even flew in some designers to help me from England, and they're still stuck here. One of them is staying at my place. He's been quarantined with me since before Coachella, obviously. And his flights keep canceling. So he keeps having to, he got a 30-day extension on his visa. We thought he was, it's like, sure, deport me, but you can't leave because there's no flights. But basically we're so busy, Coachella was about to happen. For us, it was going to be the biggest Coachella ever because we had so many acts we were building sets for. I walk across the street and it's like a time capsule in our fab building. I've got sets that are half built and it just gives me the chills. And, I remember walking out that building and just kind of being freaked out and, super depressed. And I made a quick change in my head and said, I could do something, we can actually turn the shop that was about to become our new scenic fabrication building into a venue and test, new protocols and new safety measures. And hey, why can't we put on a show? Let's just put up some plexi dividers everywhere. Let's have proper screening. Let's have, one-way pathways. Make sure no one's crossing paths. Make sure social distancing and PPE measures are taken. And, we had to learn because we stumbled a few times. How do you work the bathroom situation? That in itself was a challenge.
Yeah, so that's exactly why we're here today, Joey. That's the premise for what we hope to talk about today is you've been out there on the front line doing it. You've been doing. Some have been planning. Some are looking to do. And there's no way for us to gauge the metric of the success of the guidance. Or to roll out a second version of that guidance unless we're able to hear from the folks who are putting it to use and how well it's actually working for them. So can you kind of give us the high level overview of what exactly you've been doing from a safety standpoint regarding COVID in your venues? What protocols have you implemented? What are people doing? And what's the comfort level? And we'll come back to the questions. What's the comfort level of the people who are showing up there to actually do these things?
Yeah. So, day one was a whole new learning experience. It was, it's scary. Obviously you send your crew into a zone that someone potentially has COVID. You don't really know. We don't have tests to test people before they come in. So you just have to be at, I like to say, just a level 10 of safety. The highest safety measures we can put in place, we did, and we keep adding to it.
Can you tell us, I'm sorry to stop you, but can you tell us with specificity what measures you were implementing so people can learn from that?
Yeah, so the first thing was knowing who was showing up. So you had to be on a guest list, you had to be on a crew list, and this was just for the initial load-in, right? So we're loading in, and immediately I have a vendor show up, and I go, oh man, I don't know if their equipment is it contaminated? What do we do there, right? So we got a truck that loads up, that shows up, we go to offload it, and I'm nervous that I'm putting contaminated product into my previously disinfected building. So I just disinfected the entire shop. I disinfected all the restrooms, disinfected every office. And then now I'm going to bring in an element from an outside resource that potentially, if my guys touch it, they're going to get COVID on their hands. And, we're learning every day, but at first you're going like, you're walking around like everything's hot. It's going to burn you if you touch it. And so we developed a box that everything goes into, and you disinfect it, right? Leave it for 20 minutes, come back, you're good to handle it. But another thing is like the glove situation. We realized really quickly that gloves actually caused more hurt than they did being effective. So immediately I had a screening set up to where people show up, they get their temperature checked. There is a questionnaire. We had to have a real talk with them and say, hey, like if you've been exposed to anyone with COVID, if you have any symptoms, like we're all over it, and we prefer you not be here. Like even if you just have a relative, we have to be super cautious. So we went through the screening procedure, and then you realize, okay, well, everyone lines up and everyone naturally wants to give their buddy a high five, give someone a hug they haven't seen in a couple weeks. And you got to like relearn. It's like new muscle memory. I walk up to you, I normally want to shake your hand or give you a rock and roll punch. Everybody now is like trying to do like the elbow bump, and I'm like, you can't do that. Like, guys, like no touch.
Yeah, tell us why the gloves were an added complication.
So if you don't know how to properly use gloves, like a doctor or a nurse does, then you end up just contaminating yourself. And it also gives you this false sense of security that is not good, obviously. You think that you can touch everything and it's okay, but don't realize that everything is on your gloves is contaminated.
Right. So you're referring to specifically the way doctors take gloves off so they don't cross-contaminate their hands while they're taking them off, I guess, or more than that.
So not just that, it also causes your hands to sweat. And so now you have like itchy hands, sweaty hands. It's, it's coming down your forearm, and now it's kind of just a big mess. So you constantly have to change your gloves, and it's a lot easier to just go wash your hands. So we just have this thing where everybody within 45 minutes, go wash your hands for like 30 seconds. And some of our technicians are actually during show, most of them are wearing wristbands that after 45 minutes turn red, and then it reminds you to go wash your hands. And once you're at the sink that has the transponder on it, it goes green. And it's just a easy way to remember, wash your hands.
Yeah, it's proactively messaging that these things need to be done with regularity, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So you've got people in, you've got people washing their hands, you've got the equipment decontaminated to some extent. Tell us about the experience with convincing artists to come to the venue.
So there's a couple, it's strange. COVID affects everybody differently, differently mentally, different physically. And so, some of the artists were like, whoa, like, I don't know if I want to go there. I don't want to get infected. I've been really good. I've been quarantined for a couple weeks. And we're like, that's fine. Here's the safety measures we put in place. And we don't really convince them. They're just like, they really want to play. They want to come out so bad. They want to perform. They want to get out of their house because, it's obviously been a drag for everyone having to sit at home and not do what they're used to. And they also want to perform for their audience. So we had a girl show up, and she was super nervous. She was a DJ, or she is a DJ. And she shows up and she's like, hey, like, I'm kind of nervous. I don't really know if I made the right decision by doing this. And I'm like, look, if you want, I'll take you personally instead of my guy who normally does it. I'll personally walk you through all the safety measures. You'll see that you're actually alone the whole time. And people won't even be within 10 feet of you. So you'll have your own green room. It's previously been disinfected. Here's the product we use. The restroom is your restroom. No one else is using it. And when we come grab you to go on stage, you're on stage alone. And the DJ equipment has all been disinfected before you use it. So I walked her through the whole thing, and she's like, wow, this is great. Like, she felt so comfortable. And then after her performance, she was like, literally, I felt like I was at a real show. You guys are great. I felt super comfortable. Is there any way I can come back? Right. And And then I even asked her, like, how do we better your experience? You know, and it was interesting. She's like, well, I was kind of nervous. We actually leave snacks. Like each artist gets their own craft services because it's been, disinfected and it's theirs and they're individually wrapped and it's fine that way, as long as it's not a community grab. So we didn't notify her that it would been disinfected. So she didn't touch anything. She was like, oh, the artist before me might have grabbed this or whatever.
Yeah, sure.
So we learned, like, you have to reassure people.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
then,
right.
yeah. But then I have the opposite side of the spectrum where an artist shows up and he's got no mask on, even though we told him, we give him a pamphlet like, hey, here's the rules and regulations. You have to abide by these or you're out. Like, we will exit you from the building immediately. We'll call show stop and you're done. He's like, COVID, whatever. It's not a big deal. I'm not worried about it. I'm like, well, here's the thing. I have people in here that are worried about it. And I have other artists showing up after you. So please follow these rules. And if you don't, I can't have you perform here. This is for the safety of others, the safety of my employees. I understand that you're not worried about it, but they are. And I've had this same conversation over and over and over again with crew, with artists, with vendors that show up. And that's another thing. You have vendors that show up that, they weren't part of your protocol 2 weeks ago and they don't care, right? Some people don't care and some people do. So you have to be so, like, we're used to being like hard hats, OSHA safety, steel toe boots. And even then it's hard to get people to listen.
Right.
This is a whole nother element of like retraining.
I think that's kind of why Chapter 2 in the reopening guidance addresses forward communications on these things and managing, expectations from the side of your audience and your crew and anyone who's coming to the venue to work in these days until we get a vaccine. It's on us, the venue owner or the producer or whoever, whatever our role is that's in the command role, to forward communicate our expectations, right? I think we talked about Scott Scoville going through some of these challenges when he did his event. And the more we at least get it out in front of the people who are expecting to come to the venue, the easier the job might be when you're trying to communicate it at the venue. So were you implementing that kind of forward comms with the vendors and artists and such?
Yeah, I mean, look, it hits nail on the head. As far as lessons learned, the biggest lesson was without advancing all the protocols and actually like truly implementing them. It's the same thing. If your stage manager is on a stage without a hard hat and the rest of the crew has hard hats, the first guy to take it off is the first guy to cause everyone else to take it off, right? It's the same thing with a mask. If a guy just slowly brings his mask down and it becomes an okay thing, 20% of the people or the crew members are doing the same thing because it's easier to breathe without the mask on. It is difficult to work. And so you have to like retrain people, and you also have to just really embed it in their heads. Like, look, I know that you are okay and you're not worried about getting COVID and you don't think it's that big of a deal. But please, please, please understand, you can't work if you don't ensure the safety of others and also ensure that they feel safe and comfortable in this environment. So you have to wear your mask. Right. I'm sorry. And if you're not gonna, you're out.
Right. That's one of the ideas of implementing the infection mitigation coordinator from the guidance, right? Uh-huh. The IMC is so that you as an event producer or whatever role you're leading in isn't also having to play bad cop with respect to monitoring the safety circumstances around potential exposure. So if you are able to deploy an IMC in the venue, and that doesn't have to be you've hired somebody special, you're already going to have a medical person on site. Here's the list of extra things we'd like you to look out for, medical person. Please help us make sure that we're not causing contamination. So it shifts some of the responsibility from you having to be the cop to you being the producer and someone of medical knowledge knowing how to look out for these things. Is that something you're deploying?
100%. But that hasn't been enough. We've learned that you need a group leadership and you need to instill that in your team's minds. You actually need the guy that doesn't care to be the leader, right? You need to, if you give him the task of, hey, I need you to back me up here. I need you to walk around and make sure that these guys are safe.
You're going to be my hero today, right? You're going to be my hero,
right? And what I found was group leadership. The guys that were so lax about this whole situation, and we can go to restaurants now without masks. That's fine. But when we're here at the venue, or we're here at this load-in or strike, we are at a level 10 of safety. We're at a level 10 of safety because we're not a restaurant, right? We're professionals in an industry that needs to be at a level 10, right? We're industry professionals. That's where we're at right now. We might be at a level 7 in 2 weeks, but right now we're going to do everything. And so by having that conversation in advance with your team and making them the cops, like, it's crazy. The guys that literally didn't care are like, dude, come on, man. Can you please, like, hey, and by the way, you're not supposed to be in this zone. This has already been disinfected for the artist. Now we have to go in and disinfect it again. We've learned that you can tell people to not do something and it's the first thing they're going to do. It's just,
that's the nature of the jackasses that we are, right? I mean, that's why we're in this business, so we can be those guys.
Like, if you're walking by a room that has all these tasty snacks for the artist, right? I'm a little hungry. Who's not going to sneak in and grab a freaking Twix bar, right? Sure. But so now we have locks on everything. Another thing we noticed was, has it been disinfected? Yes or no. We actually have these sliders that slide, yes or no, disinfected, right? So this is a green zone or it's a red zone. And that's the only way that we're able to keep track.
Right. I think last week, if memory serves me right, you did a comedy event there with Keith Mitchell. And was there an audience? Did I hear that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was an audience.
I'm sure. Well, look, I know Keith to be very funny. I'm sure that that the experience bringing an audience in started new things as well and new learnings as well. What was that like? And did you forward message the audience before they got there?
I did. It was more of like a paid audience style. It was either employees or family members. And so I needed to make sure that we weren't going to have anybody go rogue and break protocol. And this was a test, how do we figure out how to get an audience into a venue and ensure their safety? So we had to bring in extra restrooms. I had to have 3 disinfectors, 3 technicians that are disinfecting the whole time. And we treated it as though we were actually trying to COVID-19 test them. So we were going to give them actual test. And unfortunately, the test that I wanted to use didn't arrive in time. So we pretended that we did the test, and we're going to do it in 2 weeks again, but with actual test. So the plan was you test 3 days before the event, audience and crew and artist, and then you test the day of. Or you can even back it up and test a week in advance. But we were just going to do 2 tests. I went out to their cars individually. They weren't allowed to come to the screening area until we went to their vehicle and checked them in and made sure that they were ready to go to the screening area, because I didn't want a bunch of people waiting in line. Even though we have 7 foot, we actually do 7 foot here at Gallagher because we like to be extra safe.
Of course you do.
Yeah. So we've got, these orange dots they're actually every 9 feet, I think, that gives you the 7 foot of separation. But we wanted to be extra safe. So we actually went to their cars, did the screening there. They filled out the form online, through their phone. And then we brought them in groups that they came in. So if you were self-quarantined, say you're with your wife or your girlfriend or your friend that's your roommate, then you're allowed to come in together. You're able to sit at the same table. And we learned a lot. We learned that even if they're family and employees, they don't follow instructions. It's just how it is, So I could imagine what it would be like to actually introduce alcohol into the scenario, right?
Right.
Imagine, okay, I've got, 20 guests that are with us for 3 hours. They're going to have to use a restroom. right? They're going to want snacks and they also want drinks. Well, how do you handle that? We had to learn, you know, it's not like you can have a fridge. That's another thing to definitely learn by.
But let's tell us what that looked like, because that's, you know, again, that's why we're here. You're testing the boundaries of the industry's capabilities under these conditions at the moment. And, you know, to my knowledge, you may be one of the earliest ones with an audience in a venue, even though they were a family member audience. So tell us how you handled, because I've heard ideas about, well, let's just make the shows short enough so that people don't need to use the bathroom and don't need to eat. That seems reasonable as well. You know, I think everybody's itching for opportunities to be at a live event and willing to be flexible, I would hope. But you're pushing the boundaries even further. You're doing a 3-hour event where people are going to have to use the bathroom and people are going to want to eat something. So how did you manage that? What did you do?
So for the restroom situation, we just had extra restrooms, which it was easy for us because this is an open warehouse. So I just brought in, you know, Andy Gump, individual single, you know, the VIP restrooms. You know, we had a few of them, and then we have the normal restrooms that are built in. But we had a restroom attendant. So after someone used the restroom, that one was now, you know, infected, we call it, you know, and it needed to be disinfected. We don't really say that to people.
Yeah, of course.
But essentially, it's not clean, right? Yeah. So then the next restroom's available, or the other one, and this one needs to be disinfected. So we were super safe, to where on a level of, at a venue, you're just not really going to be able to do that. So we have to figure that out.
And pre-COVID, we didn't care either. I mean, that's the other thing. We'd go into Porta Johns in the middle of the muddy festival field and not even think twice about it. But now we care. So that's, you know, perception is a part of this equation also, right?
Yep. And it only takes like a minute to go in and get all the high frequency touch points in a bathroom. It's super simple, super quick. So it wasn't that hard because we had, you know, a small audience. The food thing was difficult. And we learned this from the crew. So we got sponsored by Monster at Social Sanctuary. So they brought this great fridge and gave us pallets and pallets of Monsters. And they set up this fridge. And the very first time we open it, we go, uh-oh. Like one guy touches a Monster and then moves it to go get to another one, the whole fridge is done. Right? So we immediately got the fridge, put it in the production office, and only one person is allowed to, with gloves, he has to take the guy's order. Hey, all right, what kind do you want? And he goes and gets it for him. So, I mean, that's a whole new way of thinking. It's so difficult to even, all these touchless water stations don't really exist. Like a touchless water station isn't really a thing. You usually have to press a button, right? So we're having to, you know, have, you know, hand sanitizers, you know, if you give someone their own personal stick to push the button, like it's like you start going down this rabbit hole.
Yeah, but you saw the there's somebody put it on a hi-hat stand, right? Put a squirt bottle underneath a hi-hat stand. You kick the pedal and.
Yeah, so those are killer, and we actually have a bunch of those hand sanitizer units. Right. But you just have to. Everything's got to change. It gets to be difficult. Your normal daily life is changed when you're on show site.
Well, and yes, and thank you for saying that, because I think that's, you know, those who have not yet ventured in like you have, and I would argue with both feet, you know, it hearing from yourself and folks like Scott that, you know, we did it. We, so far, knock wood, no problems at all. You can do it too. Here are the things we would, you know, and hope that you would look out for, because we've learned about these pitfalls. What's the next boundary for you? Where are you pushing this to next as you grow? Because we're still, obviously, we're nowhere yet with COVID in the reality. You know, some folks are talking about the litmus test of the protests. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but we truly don't have a vaccine. We truly don't have a safe medical treatment yet. We have a lot of people, almost all of us, every one of us needs to go back to work. How do we keep pushing that boundary and showing small successes so that little by little we're pulling folks back in? What's your next thing?
So, you know, I slowly started to introduce audience. And there was a need for it because a comedy show doesn't really work without laughs, right? You can have a laugh track all you want. And we actually had that, and the timing didn't really work out so great. You've also,
the laugh track became the funny thing, right?
yeah. What's funny is you can't even hear people laugh with a mask on, right? So because we had our audience members wear masks the entire time. When you needed to take a drink, they would lift it. Obviously, at restaurants, you don't need to do that. So maybe we do allow audience members to be socially distanced and then have their mask off. Like that might be next steps. I a couple weeks ago introduced some VIP audience members to come to a couple of DJ sets, and we had them all partitioned by plexiglass, and it went really well. We learned that you can put someone in a plexi box, but they're typically going to try and invite others into that plexi box with them.
Right.
Because we want to socialize, right? We want to be next to each other.
Right. Let's talk about. I hear a lot of folks talking about the or asking questions about the air handling systems and the filtration systems, and what effect they may or may not play on the air quality inside of a venue. And I don't know that I've seen personally, or the ESA for that matter, any scientifically backed facts on whether HEPA filtration is necessary. How often are we changing the filters? Have you just gone ahead and enacted some processes there, some protocols there? Or have you heard of anybody doing such a thing?
Yeah, so HEPA filters is a thing, and it's good in general use regardless. Definitely gets a lot of stuff out of the air that you don't want to be breathing. So I think that adding that anyways would be good, and changing them often. We typically have the venue doors wide open. All the bay doors are open. The more airflow you can get in, the better. But then when show starts, you can't have that, right? So, we have all our vents on, and we're trying to run in fresh air, but essentially there's not enough research to know if it's going to really do any good. You can even you can disinfect all the venting, right? But as soon as you have people in there again, it's like it started all over again.
Yeah, and I think what we're hearing and possibly learning is that it's the aerosol particulate matter that comes from blowing a trumpet or singing or talking or shouting that is the greatest potential for contamination, and through the air filtration system, by their nature, I believe they're knocking down, much like a mask would, the quantity of airborne particulate matter. So I do want to follow up and hear what you've come to, and I know the ESA is asking those questions on behalf of the industry to try to get to solid answers about it. And it's good that people are thinking about, is this a concern? Do we need to do different things? I would think in closed quarters like a bus, when we get back to those days, those air filters are going to matter a lot. And, there's also the public perception as well that they play a part in. What are you doing to manage expectations of crew that aren't yet back to work?
Well, that's a difficult topic, because I have a lot of employees that don't want to come back to work, and it's either stuff they have going on with their home life, or they're nervous about coming and being exposed. I've had a couple employees that were like, I'm sorry. And we're like, no problem. Like, you don't have to come. It's not a problem. I just needed to give you the opportunity to, work in one of these schedules. And then a week later, they talked to a couple of crew guys that were on site, and we're like, it's totally safe. Like, we're good. Every bathroom gets disinfected. We have a guy on site all day long cleaning and disinfecting, and all these safety measures, COVID safety measures, are in place. And we've started to integrate some of these guys who are like, you won't see me until this is over. And now they're like here at the shop and comfortable. So I think that the more we can do to ensure the health and safety of our crew, the sooner we'll be able to get back to work. Because we, at Social Sanctuary, we're providing a platform for an artist to come and do a live stream, right? and we're slowly starting to integrate some guests. I think that as we learn and figure out how to do that, the sooner we'll be able to get back to work. And, obviously you say it all the time. You can't really have a best practice until you've actually practiced it.
Yeah.
And so that's what we're doing.
Yeah. How many weeks are you into this now? You're more than 4, I would assume. Yeah.
Yeah. It's seemingly about 5 weeks.
And it doesn't appear as though you've had any contact related COVID cases or anything. You wouldn't. That's one of the challenges that the ESA points out. Is like, how do you determine where you got it from? So while that's not licensed to just go willy-nilly, I'm assuming that you're not seeing anyone directly affected by COVID as a result of being near your space or in your space.
We've actually had a couple crew members that showed up and their temperature was at the level or above the level. And so they had to go home. It turned out they didn't have COVID. They actually went and got tested.
Thank goodness for that. Yeah.
Yeah. We have had a lot of members that I'm obviously not going to mention who, but we've had a lot of members that have already had it and they tested positive for antibodies. And it was months ago, prior to social sanctuary.
I read a story in the Atlantic, I think yesterday, that there are some cases of COVID where people are 77 and 80 days in it and still being affected by it. So it is something to not take lightly, for sure. And people have varying levels of risk tolerance, and you rightly said it. You can't fault your team members for having a different risk tolerance than you or the other team member across the hall. And the other thing we learned from Scott Scoville's story was, and we weren't thinking about it until he brought it up, was there's a collateral effect to bringing people back to work that we don't necessarily right away think about, and that is, what do their loved ones think about it? Like the risk tolerance level of someone's significant other or child or parent might be significantly less, and therefore they're very frightened by the fact that somebody might be coming back to work. Are you getting stories like that? And if so, are you dealing with them, and how are you helping?
Yeah, definitely getting stories like that. I think that if someone is living with someone that is susceptible to this, then we recommend that you don't come in. It's just where we're at today. If you're living with a grandma or your significant other is susceptible to actually coming really ill from COVID, then we recommend that you don't come in. And that's obviously their choice, but everybody is reacting to this differently. Sure. And I've noticed that things have progressively gotten better and people are becoming more comfortable to go to the grocery store. Now people are going to restaurants. I have friends that are like, hey, you guys, like, I came to Social Sanctuary. You guys are still like crazy on COVID safety. And I just was at a restaurant yesterday, everyone was without masks and bars are opening. It's like, it's really hard to put one shoe on and not have to go on.
It's troublesome. It's certainly not a topic we want to get into, but it's troublesome because we don't have any clear voice or clear message or clear scientific backup to really understand where we are. And again, back to risk tolerance, there are some of us who are trying to be super protective of things that we love and treasure and are very low risk tolerance. And then there are others that are trying to get back to work. And that's completely understandable as well. But I guess what I keep preaching is the entertainment industry, who is already going to be last back to work no matter what happens. The last thing we want to do is be low in our risk tolerance, high in our risk tolerance, and get back into it and cause an outbreak or be complicit in that, and then set our industry even further back because we're already going to be back, right? So better for us and easier for us to err on the side of caution than to get ahead of it, even though we know we need to feed people, right? It's a
Yeah.
hard line. That's the thing. It's like there are so many conflicting priorities in all of this that the best meaning people, the most well-intentioned people like yourself, have to consider, things that are in direct competition with each other. And it's really troublesome. And I applaud you for doing what you're doing and doing it in a way that won't hurt the industry. And I'm so glad it's you out there and Scott Scovilles of the world, really trying and doing it the right way.
It's really important to understand that everybody's going through something at home, or they're going through, a financial crisis right now. So you also have to be thoughtful of people's feelings. And just because you feel comfortable or just because you're fine at home doesn't mean the guy working next to you is. And so we're all in this together, and the only way to come out of it is together. And I think that's the most important message to get across. We need to be there for one another right now.
Yeah.
And I mean, we're all going through the same thing right now, but in different ways. But some people are really having a tough time, and we need to be mindful of that.
Right. Has the guidance provided help for you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's great because it was a collaboration of so many minds, right?
Yeah.
Which is what's great about it.
But if you found anything,
and it's a living document, like you said.
Right. I mean, that's why we're having this conversation, right? So have you found anything in it that you want us to change yet, or that you want to be a part of the change for?
Well, I think that, wow, calling me out there.
What does it say on page 42?
I'm like, geez. Reviewed it a couple of times.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's not, I mean to stress you about it. I'm just wondering if anything stands out that we got wrong, that we should know about, or just tell us how grateful you are that it exists. Give us the shameless plug.
No, I'm grateful that it exists, and I'm excited that there's going to be more copies and more updates to it, because we are learning. I think that the one thing I would add is trying to train the producer and the managers and the supervisor on how to handle their crew. Because if you can get everybody to follow and do it in a way that actually works and makes sense to them, then the rules are easy, right? It's figuring out a way to connect with your crew on site to get them to actually follow the rules and to embrace them. That is probably could be a whole page in itself.
So empowering leaders to lead. I think you do that with information. And then the next challenge is recognizing that we're attempting to lead people who are adverse to leadership and want to be their own decision makers. Again, the beauty of the business is the blessing and the curse, right?
Exactly.
So I think that starts with compassionate leadership, the kind that you display, and helping, as you're already doing, helping empower those who would otherwise be combative toward leadership to be the change makers. And that's really clever of you to be doing it that way. Joey, look, we burned through that hour pretty fast. We're so grateful for you and your participation. Any parting shots?
We're living in a strange world right now, and it's really gonna take all of us to embrace each other, love each other, and be there for each other to get through this. And there's so many great companies and people out in our industry right now that are doing great, amazing things. We're doing some cool stuff at Social Sanctuary. There's a lot of other great people out there working really hard to get the industry reopened. If we all wake up in the morning and think, okay, what can I do to take my time, use it wisely, create positive change, be supportive of people around me, we will be back. We'll be back, and we're going to be back better than ever. I think that we've learned from this. We're learning from this, and I think that the way we run our shows is going to change, and we're going to be better for it in the long run.
Great words, Joey, and I applaud that sentiment. I think that that's really what's interesting about this time is I find a lot of people feeling that same way, and If we can just harness all that energy and keep it moving in the right direction, I think we're all going to win and be better for it. Again, thank you, Joey Gallagher, Social Sanctuary. What are your shout outs for your plugs, Joey?
ESA, all the way.
Thank you, buddy. Good luck, and keep coming back and letting us know how you're doing.
I will. I appreciate you having me.
All right, buddy. Thanks.
Thanks.